An elite bounce back for Garrett Nussmeier when the Tigers needed it most. Pro Football Focus grades the win over Vanderbilt. We got the numbers. It's locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the best ways to help us grow is to leave your comments below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As we do every week, we run through the Pro Football Focus grades. LSU Vanderbilt, will delve into that. Brian Kelly did react after the game to a tough week, which included not only a 3-game losing streak, but also losing Bryce Underwood. Now, when Brian Kelly can't mention Underwood by name, he did generalize about the week. We'll get to that here in just a little bit. But, you know, part of LSU's 3-game losing streak undeniably has been struggles from Garrett Nussmeier. With struggles with turnovers, struggles with really hesitation, inconsistency in every part of the offense. And every week we come and we look at Pro Football Focus and the grades that Pro Football Focus gives to LSU after their respective games. And I always throw this caveat that Pro Football Focus is not the metric. It's just a metric. It's something to consider. Well, consider that against Texas A&M and Alabama, Garrett Nussmeier had a 60.5 grade, identical in both of those games. Those were his two lowest graded games of the entire season. Against Florida, 66.8. It's very easy to see. When LSU plays well, Garrett Nussmeier plays exceptionally well. In the Ole Miss game, a 73, South Alabama, 79, UCLA 84, Nichols 82, USC 81.1. Garrett Nussmeier has been very good this season. His overall offensive grade is an 82.9 for the year. So again, the Texas A&M and Bama games, he was at an identical 60.5. You don't need to delve deep into the numbers to understand he played very poorly. Well, against Vanderbilt, with LSU amid a 3-game losing streak and things going not very well, Garrett Nussmeier had his best game of the entire year, grading out at an 86.3 overall. His pass grading was an 86.1. Garrett Nussmeier was absolutely fantastic. By far his best grade of the year when you absolutely had to have it. And what was so interesting, we could run through the stat sheet, but you all saw it. He threw for over 300 yards, only 9 balls hit the ground all day. I mean, a gigantic part of this was the fact that he was kept upright, and clearly he can function better within the offense whenever he's kept upright. But not only was Garrett Nussmeier kept upright, but LSU had a running game as well. And I thought this was so interesting because after the game, Brian Kelly was asked, remember, this offensive line, which a week ago against Florida was much maligned with the negative plays, the 7 sacks, the double-digit pressures, and we talked a lot about it, and justifiably. Brian Kelly, after the game, was asked how this team against Vanderbilt was able to not have a single negative play. LSU did not have not one single negative yardage play against Vanderbilt. And he asked how that was possible. And the thought was certainly that he would talk about the offensive line. That's not what Brian Kelly mentioned. Give a listen.
I will tell you, a lot of it had to do with certainly the offensive line and getting great movement up front. But more importantly, it was Garrett Nussmeier. He managed the running game as well as he's managed it since he's been here. The ball had to get out on the perimeter on sometimes. You know, those balls that were thrown out on the perimeter, Aaron Anderson or Daniels, those were, in even Lacey Late, those were run plays. But we were getting overloaded, and the ball needs to get out to the soft corner or to wherever that access is. And he did a fabulous job with it. And this is the standard that we need from him relative to where our running game can be really solid if we get that kind of play, which he gave us tonight.
Okay, a couple of things there. Please keep in mind. Number one, yes, Garrett Nussmeier, autonomy at the line, recognizing a defense, can change the play, get into the right look. He was awesome at it. It's a big part of growing up. So two things. Number one, yes, quarterbacks develop. Even for a fourth-year guy, he's still learning. It's his first time playing. It's why I've continued to hammer into your brain. You want Garrett Nussmeier back next year for a fifth year. Why do you think Jaden Daniels got so much better from year 4 to year 5? Why do you think Joe Burrow got so much better year 4 to year 5? Why do you think Zach Mettenberger got so much better year 4 to year 5? Why do you think you see this? Look at it, any position on the field. It's anything in life. You get more experience. Yes, you're going to be better. You're going to be more competent. Brian Kelly was asked about the running game, and he said the quarterback managed the running game. He got to the line when he realized overloads. He got the ball out quickly. That's one piece of it. The other piece is for everybody who's criticized play calling. And I'm not saying play calling's been great. Okay, I'm not saying that. But you know who you are. And a lot of you, and it's a fan echo chamber. Play calling. It's just the same thing. Well, it's Sloan, play calling. And I'm not saying it's been perfect. But did you hear what Brian Kelly said? He listed a handful of plays there that were called running plays, that the quarterback at the line checked to a pass and it worked. Well, how many times does it happen the other way? Where you have a play call that might have worked, quarterback makes the wrong check. It's why I always tell you, when you criticize play calling, it's so hard to do because you don't know what play was called. Neither do I. When you don't know the play call, it's hard to criticize because you don't know what they're supposed to be executing. So yes, it could be the quarterback made the wrong call at the line. It could have been a great call where the receiver was open, but someone missed a block. There's so much of it. It's the play call. It's the check at the line. It's the execution. It's tons of things that have to work in concert. And at times this year it has for LSU's offense, and times it hasn't. And over the last 3 weeks, by and large, it hasn't. And so it's convenient and easy to just blame the play call. That's not always the case. Now, the other thing that Brian Kelly did talk about, he was asked after the game about this offense and about some of the changes. Brian Kelly talked about making some changes this week, and he was asked more specifically by Wilson Alexander, the advocate, what changes specifically did they talk about? Listen to what he said.
I just thought we were simpler. I think we had 5 calls on defense, and we ran some pass plays multiple times. You know, it wasn't a different look. We were very consistent with our play calls on both sides. And that was the mantra this week is be committed to the call. Whatever that call is, execute that call. And we're not going to have a lot of calls this week. We cut out a lot. And like I said, we ran 4 vertical probably more times than I can remember in a game. But we had the checkdowns. We had other avenues to get the ball out. And I think that really helped our players stay locked in on the call and be committed to the call.
How about it? They simplified this week on both sides of the ball. I don't think it is any coincidence whatsoever that Garrett Nussmeier played his best game of the season when they simplified things. They didn't overload him with so much. And in turn, what did it do? It allowed him to be instinctive. If you missed it, we talked about it last week. My point on Garrett Nussmeier is singular. I want Garrett Nussmeier to be instinctive. That's when he's at his best. I gave you the example of the touchdown at the end of regulation against Ole Miss. Hit his back foot, boom. Aaron Anderson wasn't open yet. He was bracketed. Nuss threw it to a spot because he was instinctive, made the throw. He had to purge careless. Careless was the first interception against A&M, rolling to the sideline to his left, throwing back to the middle field, across your body up 10. Run it, get 2 yards. Throw it out of bounds. Whatever. Run out of bounds. Just don't do that. Instinctive versus careless. Well, how do you get someone to be instinctive? You stop making him think so much. How do you stop making him think? You simplify. They simplified this week, and it showed. Garrett Nussmeier had a monster day and had not only a 300-yard passing game, but also had his highest rated game of the entire season from Pro Football Focus. See if they can replicate that with one game to go with Oklahoma coming in. Okay, it is Locked On LSU. I do want to go through the rest of the Pro Football Focus grades, including a monster day for Josh Williams and a freshman having his biggest day. Wait until you hear this. It's Locked On LSU, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know being a passionate football fan, not just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, or in the case of LSU basketball on Sunday, third overtime, which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are the first in the parking lot, the last to leave. We see you. I'm going to tell you what, whether you're out at LSU tailgating or going through your workday, you need to make sure you've got 5 Hour Energy. This coming Friday, of course, we'll have Thursday, Thanksgiving, Friday, Black Friday, Saturday, LSU, Oklahoma night game. Make sure you get that malaise from all that turkey on your belly out and get plenty of 5 Hour Energy. 5 Hour Energy knows no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled up throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com and shipped nationwide. Want to run through the rest of the Pro Football Focus grades, and it should come as no surprise whatsoever that when we look at the offensive players, that the number one player graded out, as we mentioned, was Garrett Nussmeier. Number two offensively was Josh Williams, who had a monster day, 150 yards of scrimmage, 150 yards of offense from scrimmage, and a guy that had 2 long rushing touchdowns, refused to go down on first contact. And Brian Kelly talked about his super senior running back.
He ran through the face of a number of defenders. It was physicality. It was want to. It was desire. It was all those things in one. It was just a guy that was, committed to no matter what, the first guy's not going to bring me down. And he set a tone for our entire team, a toughness on offense and a resolve that these guys showed this week. And I think he was one of our leaders this week, spoke up many times. He spoke up before our meal today when we meet with our team. He really was committed to making sure that we found a way to win this game.
Josh Williams was awesome offensively for LSU. When you look at the rest of the offense, Miles Frazier, Will Campbell were 3 and 4 among the highest graded players, which is fantastic to see. The LSU offensive line dominated this game. Will Campbell, stellar, 88.9 pass blocking grade. Frazier's pass blocking grade was 82.7. Neither allowed a single pressure. So you've got to look and say, man, what happened last week against Florida? Well, you didn't have Garrett Dellinger. Miles Frazier went out, and you were weakened on the interior of your line. It's pretty easy to see why it went the way it did. So fantastic day for some of those offensive guys. Chris Hilton, also just 8 offensive snaps, but was your 5th highest graded player offensively. Great to see. At the bottom, the rookie tight end, Trey'Dez Green and Kamorian Pimpton were there at the bottom. Green played just 4 total snaps, Pimpton 16 total snaps. But again, you're continuing to see these guys play different roles. Green had a really nice catch near the goal line, just short. They targeted him in the end zone on that 4th down play. Didn't come up with the catch. But in any event, a good day for LSU offensively. Defensively for the Tigers, well, I guess we could also look at the other lowest graded starter, which was DJ Chester, who continues to struggle. His overall grade was a 58.3, and he was the 3rd lowest graded player of any of the starters on either side of the ball. The lowest graded player, a little bit of a surprise, was Zy Alexander. And Zy Alexander has been your best player in the secondary all season, but he was your lowest graded defender overall, played all 47 snaps, but his tackling grade was a 38.7 and his coverage grade was a 52. Of course, it was Zy Alexander who gave up the touchdown on the first offensive snap. That's going to ding you a little bit when it happens that way. Gio Paez was the second lowest graded player. And that's surprising because Paez has generally been one of your higher rated players. Paez played only 21 snaps in the game. That's a season low for him. And what you saw was LSU run more of a 4-3 in this game. And they rotated younger players in. And Dominic McKinley is the pleasant surprise. So Dominic McKinley, the 5-star number 1 player in Louisiana, interior defensive tackle, was your highest graded player defensively. Now, he only played 17 snaps, 9 against the run, 8 against the pass. His overall grade was a 73. But it's very nice to see that as you start to get young players more reps later in the season, they continue to play well. The other thing that was great to see, the next 3 highest rated players, Greg Penn, West Weeks, who played 20 snaps, and Whit Weeks, who played all 47 defensive snaps. All 3 linebackers were right there. We did talk about West Weeks as well. And, West Weeks played in his 4th game of the season, which means he cannot play against Oklahoma if he wants to maintain his red shirt. So, I asked Brian Kelly about this several weeks back, but West Weeks had a foot injury. He's been able to go, but they've been instead getting some of the younger guys reps holding West Weeks, and with the understanding that if they needed him to win a game, they would play him. So Saturday against Vanderbilt was the 4th game that West Weeks has played this year, meaning if he plays against Oklahoma, he loses his red shirt. I will remind you that the NCAA changed the rule whereby players can play in a bowl game and it won't cost them their red shirt. So West Weeks cannot play against Oklahoma to maintain his red shirt, but he would be able to play in the bowl game. And Brian Kelly talked about Weeks and his willingness to play with everything on the line.
I mean, it was just a great way to, look at somebody that is totally committed to what we're doing and being ready to step in when needed. The Weeks boys have been instrumental in helping us continue to grow as a program, and both of them, we're very confident we'll have them back next year. And with that, you get great leadership and you get guys greatly committed to what you're doing. So you can push them up in front and say, this is how it's done. And when you have a lot of those guys out there, it just helps everybody in the program.
When you think about the linebacker position for next year, if in fact you have West Weeks back, of course you're going to lose Greg Penn to graduation, but West Weeks and Whit Weeks would both be back. Continuing to hear more and more conversation about Harold Perkins returning. If he does, that's 3 veterans you would return at linebacker, in addition to Devon Keys and Xavier Atkins, who continue to play more. As a matter of fact, Devon Keys played 46 defensive snaps. LSU went to more of a traditional 4-3 against Vanderbilt, and Devon Keys, the freshman, played 46 defensive snaps. He actually got the start as well. So it's nice to see that they're getting that kind of run out of some young guys. PJ Woodland saw the field for 9 snaps. You got to see some young guys. Among the starters, the disappointing thing from Saturday is that your 2 lowest graded starters on either side of the ball were Sage Ryan and Jordan Gilbert, your 2 safeties. It's no secret. Safety is the weakest position on this team, and I don't know that there's a close second. They've got to address that in the offseason. Yes, you want Deshaun Spears to grow and get better, and Kylan Jackson and Javen Toviano, and you want some of those young guys to grow up and get better. But you are going to absolutely have to go into the transfer portal and get elite starting caliber safeties, like not just a body, but elite starters at safety, because that has been such a weakness and Achilles heel for this team throughout this year. So 1 game to go in the regular season against Oklahoma, and we'll talk about it as we move through. But the Tigers head into this week coming off a win, something that hasn't been the case for the last 3 weeks. It's been a tough go, and Brian Kelly was asked about that, the tough stretch they've been through, not only on the field, but also on the recruiting trail. We'll let you hear what Brian Kelly had to say next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is Excuse me. There it is. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time, y'all. LSU and Oklahoma this weekend, final game of the season in Tiger Stadium before the Valley sleeps for almost a year. You want to be there? Game Time can help. If you find tickets, remember, you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Also, they've got event cancellation protection. So you get an automatic full refund for events that are canceled and not rescheduled. It's Game Time. You got to check it out, y'all. I also love the fact that you can filter out only incredible deals on great seats with Game Time picks. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. It's been a really rough month for LSU football for Brian Kelly. After the 63-yard touchdown on Vanderbilt's first offensive play, there was a chant from the student section chanting "Fire Kelly, fire Brian Kelly." There have been pundits, local and national, questioning if Brian Kelly's the right guy for the job, calling for his job. It's part of it. Brian Kelly's familiar. He's coached at high pressure situations, and when you don't win, that's just what it's going to be. He was asked after the game on Saturday, Brian Kelly was, about going through this tough stretch. And not only with the losses, but also with the loss of Bryce Underwood. Now, I'm going to play this clip for you, but I want you to remember that a coach cannot mention a recruit by name until that recruit has signed. So he can't specifically talk about Bryce Underwood, but he did talk in generalities. And I'm going to let you hear what he said, and then I'm going to come back and talk about it after. Here you go.
Yeah, the recruiting doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot when you're talking about your football team in the present, right? I mean, everybody else certainly felt differently about that recruiting piece. But that didn't really affect our players, nor the coaches. Yeah, you're disappointed because you've put, many, many years into recruiting, but it really didn't affect the core of what we wanted to accomplish. And that was, we wanted to finish this football game. And we finished taking a knee on the 10-yard line. And that's how you want to finish football game. So, yeah, the noise was there, but you're going to get noise at LSU when you lose 3 games in a row. But it wasn't because of our guys not being committed, and they show that commitment this week.
I remember I was listening to an interview that a former LSU tight end Richard Dixon did. And if you're familiar with our radio station, 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge, on Fridays, Charles Handegriff, Jimmy Ott, who are longtime radio broadcasters, they do a Football Friday show. And Richard Dixon, the former LSU tight end, who does postgame with Charles Handegriff as well on Eagle 98.1. Richard spends an hour, the first hour of their Friday show with Handegriff. And this past Friday, they were talking about the Underwood decommitment because it had just happened, 12 hours before, I guess 15 hours before, whatever it was. And Richard made a point, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said in his time at LSU, the only recruit he could ever remember by name was Russell Shepard, one guy. So in all his time at LSU as a starter and everything, he was completely and blissfully unaware of recruiting, who was committed, what mattered, except for one guy. Now, maybe this and Bryce Underwood would have been that one guy because he was so highly touted. But the other thing he said is there's not a single guy on LSU's team that thinks a freshman would come in and beat them out. which is exactly what you want. And it makes sense. So while I think what it underscored for me, and you hear me say this, you've heard Shea Dixon, who we have on the show all the time, say this, fans, and I've just learned this over the years to be true, fans look at recruiting through a different prism than the coaches and the players do. Fans think, oh my God, they lost a game. They lost 3 games. Are the recruits going to leave? You've got 5 stars committed to Florida State right now, a team that's 2-9, and they're still in. I mean, when you spend 3 years developing a relationship and going through the recruiting process and making the decision on where you're going to go, 3 games isn't likely to switch that. Now, $12 million will change your mind, as it did with Bryce Underwood. But I don't think the Bryce Underwood thing had anything to do with this roster at all. Like, I don't think any player on this roster was moved in any way by that whatsoever. Fans are. And we can talk about the future of the program and all that stuff and the impact. And I welcome that. I think it's something we should talk about. You know, what direction they go. That's fan narratives. But for the guys on the team right now, they were trying to figure out how to beat Vanderbilt. And this week, they're going to try to figure out how to beat Oklahoma, a team that just held Alabama to 3 points. I mean, there's a lowest scoring output in 20 years for Alabama. Held them out of the end zone, a team that put up 40 on LSU. So you got a big challenge this week. You're not worried about Bryce Underwood in the future and all those things. They're worried about beating Oklahoma this week. It sounds cliche and sounds like coach speak, but it's true. The 18, 19, and 20 and 21-year-olds on the team just think of things differently than you and I do as adults from the periphery. Brian Kelly reacted to it. I think he was honest in his assessment. We'll have plenty of time throughout this early signing period, the transfer portal, to talk about roster construction for 2025 and beyond. But the most important thing LSU can do right now is go have another great week of preparation, beat Oklahoma to go 8-4, win a bowl game to go 9-3, which is not what 9-4, which is not what anybody wants, but it's better than the alternative of losing Oklahoma and losing a bowl game. Get some good momentum back behind you, some good vibes back behind this program as it moves forward to 2025, and hopefully will be a run at a playoff and a potential championship year. You know, we'll be here talking about it on Locked On LSU. Hey, do me a favor. Hey, thanks so much for listening, by the way. And thanks for making us your first listen. Now for your second listen, go check out Locked On SEC. Check out my guy, Chris Gordy. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you find podcasts. Speaking of which, if you are listening on podcast, thank you. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. We appreciate so much our everydayers that are always here. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.